I've got a special one today. I'm going to be trying the best whiskey in Australia according to the World Whiskies Awards 2025. Hey guys, I'm Nath Martyn, the Whiskey Scribe. I'm a whiskey enthusiast and I love all things whiskey. But taste is subjective and there's a lot of different whiskies out there. So whether you consider yourself a connoisseur or you're just looking to understand more about whiskey, let's explore it all together. Hit the subscribe button. I put up regular video reviews about whiskies as well as some interesting educational pieces about the history or the background of whiskey making. But today I've actually got something really special. Now you probably, if you're a whiskey drinker, you would know about the World Whiskies Awards. And what I have today is the whiskey that the World Whiskies Awards for 2025 called the best whiskey, the best single malt in Australia. Yes, Australia, single malt winner. And the people at Hellyers Road were so good as to send me a sample so that I could get to try that. And I love these boxes where they come with a lot of different information as well. So I've got a friendly handwritten note there saying, "We hope you enjoy a taste of Australia's best single malt. We look forward to hearing your thoughts," from the team at Hellyers Road. A bit of information about the whiskey, which I'll cover in a second, but the best whiskey in Australia for 2025 was voted as Hellyers Road Peated 21-year-old. Now, this is the oldest Australian whiskey I've ever had. And keep in mind that the Australian whiskey industry has only been going since 1995. We had to fight a lot of laws and everything to be able to make it legal to produce whiskey in Australia. Bill Lark was very much at the forefront of that, and Hellyers Road was one of the early distilleries that started in Tasmania as a result of those changes. But because our industry is only 30 years old, there's not many extremely aged whiskies. And we've got a massive angel share in Australia. So any whiskey over like 5 or 10 years, there's not much left in the barrel by the time you get to that. It's really only Tasmania, which has a climate a little bit more leaning towards Scotland's climate. So that's really the only place in Australia where you can age whiskies for a long time and still actually have enough whiskey in the barrel to bottle and sell. So that's why you don't see a lot of age statements on whiskies. But from what I understand, Hellyers Road is actually internationally available. So you can pick up, there were only 300 of this one made, 300 bottles of the 21-year-old peated, but you might actually be able to see it on the international market. So keep an eye out for that. If I'm looking at the whiskey information itself, it's a peated cask finish. So Hellyers Road 21-year-old spent the first 17 years aging in American oak ex-bourbon barrels, and then it spent 4 years in an ex-peated Hellyers Road cask. So it's a peated cask finish. So the last 4 years it spent in a barrel that previously contained a peated Hellyers Road whiskey. So the smoke on this isn't going to be exceptionally strong, but that's possibly why it's won the award. It's at 21 years, it's most likely a really nice balance of all those flavors. I have had a very brief sample of this that I did for a reel, but just tasting that, I knew that there was a lot more to it. So I wanted to give the whiskey a really fair chance. I wanted to do a proper review that wasn't rushed into a 90-second video. But that. So the color of this, now I believe this is natural color. It's not quite as dark as you might expect from a 21-year-old whiskey, but it has been aged in ex-bourbon casks, so there's not a lot of color to pull from that. But it is a really nice, sort of like a golden auburn color. And look, initially I thought there were no legs, but that is just really slow moving legs. So this is quite an oily whiskey, and I love oily whiskeys because that natural oil in the whiskey tends to hold flavor. It helps to pull it from the barrel and it helps to keep it in the whiskey itself. So initially on the nose, There's quite a bit of sweetness that comes across on the nose here. So you do get a bit of golden syrup and things like that, which is interesting considering it's not been aged in fortified wine barrels. There's also kind of like a nuttiness in there. So you got this oily, sweet, syrupy sort of sweetness on the nose. And there's this nutty characteristic, almost like roasted macadamias. There's some sweetness that I would also call maybe a little bit stone fruit. Their tasting notes do say peaches, I think. I'm not a big fan of peaches. I don't eat a lot of peaches. There's a faint saltiness in there as well. I do believe Hellyers Road is relatively close to the sea. So primarily on the nose, what I'm getting is that syrupy sort of sweetness. I'm getting that oily, almost like roasted nutty sort of texture. It could be somewhere between macadamia and maybe even, I don't know, maybe even like walnuts. And there is that faint note of a sea breeze. But I can't wait anymore. I have to try this again. So I said that I tried this previously. The first time I tried it, I hadn't drunk any other whiskies beforehand, so my palate was a little bit raw. I got caramel sweetness. I did get a faint hint of smoke. I could tell that there was a lot more there, but I wasn't really quite picking it up. I have had a couple of other whiskies tonight just to sort of freshen my palate and get it ready for this. And I'm getting a lot more flavor. That sweetness on the palate that on the nose that I initially called golden syrup, that's coming across more like caramel now, like legitimately as caramel. And it's a really earthy flavor. There's a lot of oily mouthfeel. I'm getting, the smoke is coming across a little bit more like char, as though the barrel was more heavily charred rather than that it's coming across from peat. And then I'm getting some floral notes. Like there's a little bit of, there's vanilla in there, but I'm getting something else. Their tasting notes do have lavender. I don't know if I'd quite call it lavender, but I'm getting almost like this mix of sort of the flavors that you would expect to get from the smell of like those, almost like those potpourri sort of bags. The finish has got that sweetness sort of, it falls off kind of quickly. You don't have the sweetness lingering on the palate for too long, but you've got sort of like the earthy flavors that come from almost chocolate. So imagine like a not too sweet dark chocolate, that sort of almost, or coffee, just that bean sort of earthy note is lingering there on the palate. But it's really interesting because this is quite complex. There's a lot in there that I'm getting from it. And like I said, this is the oldest whiskey that I've had. It's the oldest Australian whiskey that I've had, 21-year-old. I think I haven't had too many age statements from Australian whiskies because we usually don't bother, since most whiskies are under 10 anyway. But the other thing I would say about this too is, this is cask strength. This is 52.5%. It's not coming across as particularly harsh. So it really has balanced itself out. Most whiskeys over 50%, if they're kind of on the young side of things, they might have a lot of flavor, but they also come with a little bit of a punch. This is going down quite smooth. If you asked me to guess the ABV without knowing, I probably would have suggested something like 48%. Because it's, yes, it's strong, but it's not in your face, it's not rough at all. All the flavors in here are really nicely harmonized and balanced with everything else. It is a really nice whiskey, and taste is subjective. I always say that. So I'm always hesitant to believe when a whiskey is awarded the best whiskey in the world or something like that, because that comes down to the flavor profiles of the judges. It comes down to the which whiskies were submitted that year. For all we know, there are better whiskies than what was submitted to the competition. But at the same time, if every single judge on the panel agreed that this was exceptional, you know it's still going to be good. Yeah, I can understand how this won the best Australian whiskey for 2025. I would love the opportunity to compare it to every single other whiskey in Australia. If every other distillery in Australia would like to send me samples of their whiskey, I will happily do that panel. But for now, I will say that this is probably right up there. But with only 300 bottles made, you don't have much of an opportunity to get to try them. So I am very thankful of Hellyers Road for sending this to me. I'm really cherishing this, and as you can see, I poured out the rest of the bottle. So this is every last drop I've got. So I'm probably going to try and savor this as much as I can tonight. But I appear to be running out of battery because I filmed a bunch of other videos before this. So I'm going to say thank you, Hellyers Road. Subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. But enjoy what's in your glass, no matter where it's from, no matter how old it is, no matter what awards it's won. If you enjoy it, that's fantastic. But I'm really enjoying this. And slange.